right, guys, here we are. We made the day 3 cut. After the day 2 weigh-in here at Eufaula, wasn't even, actually, I'm not even gonna say wasn't sure. I did not think I was gonna make it. I went back to the camper, didn't even touch my fishing stuff. Was kind of down in the dumps after a good first day, kind of letting the ball slip out of my hand on the second day. But fortunate enough, we caught just enough. I think we ended up with 32.5 for 2 days, and we're in 35th place going into day 3. First cut made on the Elite Series, day 3 cut, pretty cool. Knew I really probably didn't have a shot to make the day 4, being in 35th, so I kind of was just able to go fishing real loose and not a whole lot of stress and everything. Still some stress, but not near as much as on other days, so that was pretty good experience too. Going into day 3, once I realized I was going to make it, I said I'm just going to go do what I've been doing and let the chips fall where they may. As you can see in the video, I run down. I start in the same creek I fished for 2 days. I've literally weighed in every bass but one 6-pounder out of there in 2 days. So it's been good to me. I can't really complain. I get down there and I can, after about 30 minutes, I can already tell that it's going to be a little bit tougher in there. Had a little bit of company come in there the second day. A few guys that weren't there the first day, they kind of started scrambling around. And because once you got into the creek, you could get a few bites pretty quick normally, and you could tell that the pressure had started to get to it a little bit. But with that being said, about, I'd say 10 or 11 o'clock, I had like a 4 3/4. I caught a pretty good one on a frog, like a 3 3/4, and then had some 2-pounders maybe a 2 1/4. So really didn't have that much. So at that point, I kind of decided, I said, well, let's just go change directions 180 degrees. Let's run down where I graphed all the brush in practice down on the lower section of the lake and just see what bites and see what we can catch. We really don't have a whole lot to lose. And when I made that move at 10:30, 11 o'clock, I don't really remember what time it was, but I rolled up, and I think the first 5 or 6 brush piles I rolled up to, I got a bite out of. And I mean, when you run into stuff like that, you kind of realize that the guys that had been running brush, that they're going to catch them that day. And I even told my marshal, I said, there's a few guys I know that are running stuff real similar to this that are really going to catch them today. And they ended up catching them very good, actually. But I'll go back because I just remembered something. When I got into that creek the third morning, I was pitching the edge of that water willow, and I noticed when I pitched my jig over there and I'd pick up, my line would have moved down the edge of the grass maybe 6 or 8 inches, like current was pulling it. But the weird thing, supposedly they weren't generating any from the upper dam at Eufaula. I didn't call the actual Eufaula dam that morning. But normally, if you've got water pulling out of a creek and they're not running any water from the upper end, they're probably pulling from the lower end, which what that's going to do to the lake, it's going to drop the water level. And by 9 or 10 o'clock, I saw the water dropping 2 or 3 inches on that grass. And then when them fish are sitting in a foot of water, they can feel that, little bit of water coming off of them. Normally it makes them real skittish, makes them not want to bite, or they'll just leave it all together. And I think that's what kind of put into the brush deal really coming alive those last 2 days. At the day 3 and day 4, when those guys caught them really well. There was some current getting generated on that lower end around that brush that you couldn't really see if you were moving on up the lake, and you wouldn't see it or wouldn't know it if you called the upper dam to see if there was any generation going to happen. So that kind of really played into the brush pile deal. I think that's why they were biting so good when I got down there that afternoon on the third day. Coiled probably 3 or 4 times down there, and I think you can see it on the video. I put it in there like my second to last cast. I roll up on this last brush pile before I know I got to leave, and I throw out there, and I'm getting lined up, and I pick up, and he's just going the other way with it, and I lean into him. And of all the other ones, I mean, I kind of turned them a little bit, and this one I just held on, and I mean, it's just taking me the other way, and I can feel it going through the brush. It ends up breaking me off. I think it was a really big one. I mean, there's no way to ever know, but just the way it hit, most of the time those big ones bite. They're the first ones to bite, and they never let it hit the bottom if they're in the brush pile. So just a little tip. But always be ready when you throw in one, because if he's got it on the fall, normally it's a pretty good one. Well, I'm going to give you a rundown of what I was throwing in the brush piles. and then I'll do a little recap of the jig I was flipping, but I did that on day 1 and day 2 and day 3. But want to go over the brush pile bait that I was using. It's about as simple as it can get. It's a Zoom Magnum trick worm. I threw a black color mostly. You could throw a plum or a green pump. You know, I mainly stuck with the black. Right now rigged up, I've got it on a 3/8 ounce arc tungsten weight with an insert. I like an insert with fluorocarbon line. The weight of the worm really depended on the weather. If the wind was blowing pretty bad, I was throwing a 3/8, even up to a half. If it slicked off and I could really feel my bait fine way out there, I would throw a 5/16. I prefer a 5/16, but like I said, if the wind's blowing too bad and you can't feel what your bait's doing, or if you're near the brush pile, you need to bump your weight up a little bit. The rod I was throwing it on is a Randall Tharp series from Arc. It's an offshore special. It's a 7/6 medium heavy. It gives you a lot of length in the rod to be able to make a long cast, and it's got plenty of tip where you're not. It's not like a flipping stick 7/6, so you're not out there. You're barely moving the tip of the rod, and the bait's moving 4 feet. The tip's got a lot of play in it, so it's sensitive, and you're not moving the bait a long ways. That's really the main deal with this whole rod setup. Reel again is a Lew's Pro TI. It's the same reel I use basically on everything else. 18-pound sniper fluorocarbon. Like I said, you probably could have used shooter too. I just had 18 sniper in my boat, but the 18-pound was really key, I think. One key thing about the weight, the Texas rig, is I wasn't using a peg. I was not pegging my weight. I was letting it slide up and down, because if you visualize it, you've got a brush pile and you've got your worm creeping through there, and let's say the weight falls to the bottom, but the worm still stays up in the branches, you know it may get you an extra bite or two, just a little bit different action. Don't think I mentioned it. The hook I was using was a 5/0 Gamakatsu, just a worm hook, round bend. I've had the best success with it, fishing brush and stuff like that. I tried a couple other baits around the brush, you know, swim jig, stuff like that. Didn't really get as many bites. I know a couple people caught them on that very well. A lot of people caught them cranking brush. I never really got on that bite. I hadn't done that a whole lot. I was just more comfortable with, you know, casting out there and dragging. But that's really the main gist of it. I think we ended up with 16-15 or 16-13 after day 3. Bumped us up to 31st place, so we gained 4 points. Might not seem like a lot, but at the end of the day, it very well, or not the end of the day, the end of the year, those points become very valuable. One thing that was real key for me when I went to fishing the brush piles was my Humminbird Mega 360. I had it on my Solix unit, and what I like to do is there's a setting on the Solix unit that you can only be looking at 180 degrees, which is just in front of you from straight out the sides all the way to the front, and it just blows the picture up instead of looking at a full 360 degree circle where you can see stuff behind you as well. I like to put it on that front view when I'm fishing brush or fishing an isolated piece of structure like that. But the best thing about running the Humminbirds is the attention to detail and how clear it is. Where I actually caught the fish out of the brush piles, I saw there's a lot of brush in Eufaula. I mean, like millions of piles. And it just seemed like the best ones that I could find seemed to have life around them. You would see some brim beds over here. You would see some fish. I mean, they may be 20 or 30 feet away from the pile, but anywhere you would get a bite, there would always seem to be life around it. And you could tell a lot of that was going on with the clarity of the Humminbird on the side imaging and the down imaging. But most everything I found in practice graphing was on the side imaging. But once I found it on the side imaging, that basically my setup was I would put the waypoint on my Helix unit up front, and you can put a ring around your waypoint. So I would put a ring at 65 feet, which is about what a normal cast is, and I would get my boat right up on the ring, facing, you know, have your line facing the waypoint, and then my 360, it was on your 360, you're on 20 foot, 40 foot, 60 foot, and 80 foot rings. The pile would normally be between the 60 ring and the 80 ring, and I'd put it right in the center, and I would just hit spot lock, and I could throw and hit it every single time. And, you know, it just makes you a lot more efficient on the water. Doesn't make you spend 10 minutes trying to find one pile. I had a situation a couple years ago in a really big tournament where I was fishing brush, and I didn't have all the stuff that I have now on my boat, and it would take me 15 or 20 minutes to find a pile that's the size of your trash can. And when I would find it, I would get a bite, and then you know, you'd catch the fish, then you'd have to go find it again, and you just lose a lot of time that way. So this just makes it that much more easier. You could even see the brim beds off to the side of the piles on the 360, and some of the fish that I ended up catching on that third day, I wasn't even throwing at the actual pile. I would throw to the brim bed and be dragging it through, and you could feel it going down in the divots and hit a rough spot, and that's when your bite would come. So those fish are just sitting around those brim beds, as well as the brush piles, just, you know, feeding on anything that they can. But that's just a main thing that I had going with the 360 and the Humminbird. Just the whole, when you put all that together, the spot lock, the 360, the clarity on the graph, the side image and the down image, just the whole one boat network, it just all comes into play when you've got all that working for you, and the results kind of speak for themselves. Not just for me, but for, you know, a lot of guys in the top, and even Buddy Gross winning. You know, he runs Humminbirds, runs the 360 and all, and I know it contributed to his win too.
From Alabama, his first season on the Bassmaster Elite Series. Get loud for Wes Logan. He is another one you want to keep your eyes on. It's his first season here, but he is no rookie. 32 pounds, 5 ounces, start today, 16-13 to add to that. He moves into 22nd place with 49 pounds and 2 ounces. Hold him high. Let's hear it for him. Wes Logan, his first season on the Bassmaster Elite Series, and one you're going to want to keep your eyes on for years and years to come. Decent finish with the restart here, Wes. Got to feel okay about that?
Yeah. I mean, after my practice, I'm tickled to death to be where I'm at. You know, I'm one of them Coosa River bank beaters. I come down here, I said, I'm just going to be stubborn and just beat the bank and try and get a check, which is basically what I did. But I actually graphed for like a day and a half just looking for brush. And today about 10 o'clock, I had them 2 good ones up shallow. I caught almost every fish I weighed in out of the same creek, and I started in there, caught those 2 good ones. At about 10, it just, like I wasn't getting bit. I said, I'm going to them brush piles. And every one of them I pulled up to, I got a bite out of until I came in. But the weird thing was, I had that Humminbird 360, and there's brim beds beside every good brush pile where the bass are. Well, I wasn't getting bit in the brush. I was getting bit. I had to throw at the brim bed to get the bite, which was kind of neat. So I kind of figured that little deal out and caught a bunch, just never really got that big bite today.
So the little adjustments like that really paid off. Congrats on a great finish.
Appreciate it. I'm lucky and very blessed to be where I'm at and be doing what I'm doing. And hopefully we can make a few more cuts, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.